Welcome to another episode of Parallax Vodcasts. On the 1st of February, the military in Myanmar, in an effective coup, deposed the civilian government and took charge of the country, declaring a state of emergency for a year. This it did after arresting almost the entire senior leadership of the National League for Democracy, which is the largest political party in Myanmar, including Nobel Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi and the president of Myanmar. Now, the coup has obviously ended for now the process of democratic transition that Myanmar embarked on in 2015 when the first free and fair elections were held and which got the NLD to power. At the same time, what the coup has done is put the region, the broader region, in a bit of a tight spot. Because critically, the coup comes during a time of great geopolitical influx and shifting of power balances, particularly in the South and Southeast Asian region. To discuss these, today I have with me Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, who's India's former ambassador to Myanmar and currently a distinguished fellow at Gateway House. Ambassador Bhatia has extensive experience of dealing with Myanmar, and I would say both the civilian and military arms of the country. And this is something that I must say that Myanmar is a fairly complex country to deal with in terms of a diplomatic engagement. And Ambassador Bhatia has, even after his retirement, has kept on, has helped many of us make sense of what Myanmar has turned out to be, how the political insecurity and the military dynamics have panned out. So I don't think there's a better person today to discuss this. Welcome to the show, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anshuman.
And thanks a lot for taking out time to speak to us. Ambassador Bhatia, I'll just begin with a very straightforward question. For India, Myanmar is an important country, and by so far this has become clear, not least because of its Act East policy, under which Myanmar is considered a land bridge to Southeast Asia, right? Where do you see India's relationship with Myanmar going from here in a post-coup scenario? Because this does put India in a bit of an awkward spot.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you and talking to all those friends who are interested in a vital neighbor of India, Myanmar, earlier known as Burma. You have succinctly depicted the the data, the emergency which we saw starting from 1st February. The question is what it means for India and where the Myanmar-India relationship will move forward from here. Yes, the question is justifiable and valid because there is concern, even anguish in India that democracy has been derailed in our neighboring country. The democratic transition that you spoke of began in 2015, but in some fashion, perhaps you would agree it began in 2011, when at least the direct military rule ended and a general turned a civilian leader became the president. But at that time, the military's own party, USDP, came up. In 2015, on the other hand, NLD came into power. So we were seeing transition in phases. India was happy with the progress in the transition, and therefore, now that this phase of the transition has come to a halt, there is natural anxiety since India itself is the world's largest democracy. But I think from that concern, we should not become, deeply anxious about the relationship as such. India is among very few countries which understands perfectly as to how the transition was happening, where exactly the power lay, and above all, who were the people who really mattered in that country. And as a result, the Indian government kept its channels open and focused on building relationships, both with the civilian leaders and the military leaders. Now, one set of leaders have gone out, but the others are there. In fact, now the others who had only half loaf of the power is now armed with both the loaves, the full loaf of power. So India would deal with them. India would understand their needs. They also will need to understand India's sensitivities and needs. So after this initial phase when there is pressure from within India and from outside India on the Indian government to go out and support the cause of democracy, uh, India will find a way. India has traveled on this road. Therefore, India will find a way to deal with those who would wield power in Myanmar.
Right. Ambassador, there's this concern that um, of in terms of projecting a pro-democracy position and balancing it with the working relationship that India has built with the Tatmadaw, the Myanmar military. Now, over the past 1 decade, we have seen this relationship, this security slash defense relationship, grow even stronger. And in fact, in the last half a decade, we have seen 2 or 3 very high-profile visits, in fact, mutual high-profile visits from the political and security establishments of both countries. We have seen the commander-in-chief of the Myanmar military do two very long tours of India, 8 and 9 day tours of India. So on the visible front, India has actually very much ramped up its closeness with the military, with Myanmar military. And I think 2 years ago, we also did a peacekeeping, UN peacekeeping training exercise with the Myanmar military. What I want to understand from you, is there going to be some kind of downscaling of this visible, at least on the visible front, this visible intimacy that India showed? Particularly also because now the Myanmar military faces charges to the tune of genocide at the International Court of Justice, and has also effectively overthrown a popularly elected government. So do you think New Delhi will now be a little bit more careful in terms of how it shows its closeness with the military, at least on the public front?
Uh, it is going to be an exercise in calibration for the reasons that you have mentioned very aptly. Uh, Clearly, there are sensitivities in the circles of people and media and civil society in India, besides the external pressures from the West and other Asian countries. So they will have to be reckoned, they will have to be taken into account. But at the end of the day, India has hardcore interests in Myanmar, which impact or impinge on India's internal security requirements, on India's defense requirements, on the geopolitical balance in the region, and also very solid economic investments and projects that we are running in that country. So on both sides, when you look at, you simply come to the natural conclusion that will be a measured, calibrated policy by South Bloc. As to the visibility part, again, you have to recognize that Senior General Min Aung Hlaing is a friend of India. He holds very positive views about India and its leadership. You would recall when he came last time, he was received by the Prime Minister of India, which is very unusual for an army chief, for a visiting army chief. That kind of a courtesy is hardly extended any other occasion. So it is a neighbor, it's an important neighbor. It's a country which is central to India's neighborhood policy, Act East policy, and the Indo-Pacific policy. Therefore, I would say, initially, perhaps we may be a bit coy, but when things settle down, we simply have no, serious option except to deal with those who would wield power there.
Right. Ambassador, recently there was a statement from, I think, yesterday, there was a statement from the United States State Department that they're contemplating working with quote unquote like-minded partners in the region who have, again, quote unquote, better working relationships with the Myanmar military, and India and Japan were expressly mentioned in that statement. Um, how do you see this pan out? Do you think India can sort of leverage this situation to build in coordination with the United States, the new Biden administration, in order to put some kind of soft pressure on the military actors in Myanmar to go back to status quo ante or restore democratic order?
I'd like to make 2 points in answering this perceptive question. Once again, I think we, the people interested in Myanmar, have to recognize that the responsibility for re-establishing and nurturing democracy rests on the shoulders of the people of Myanmar, its leaders and its elites. People have again been let down, sadly, by their leaders and by their elites. They have to discharge their responsibility. It is not the responsibility of the neighbors or outside powers to go and impose and run democracy in Myanmar. I think this is something that we have to grant. Within that framework, we obviously, as I said earlier, as a democracy, have sympathies for countries which want to run their own democracies. So, in that light, we will have to look at what is going on, first of all, within the Quad members. The Quad members, without really talking of any uh, privileged information, I can say, seems to be divided into two camps. There are US and Australia, which are talking the language of condemnation, sanctions, immediate strict action, and that sort of thing. And behind the scene, British are also on the same very side. But India and Japan are two Asian countries. They have extensive relationship with Myanmar. They have to protect their interests, and above all, they are also concerned with ensuring that Myanmar does not move even more closely to China than it already has done. So, in light of all those factors, India and Japan will have to collaborate to discuss and persuade the other Quad members to understand what the realities of power are in this region. We probably would use the argument to the Biden administration that if you say, as you have said, China is the number one issue today in Indo-Pacific, then I think it is logical that we should be very careful in not alienating an important country such as Myanmar.
Right. Ambassador, you already mentioned elephant in the room, or rather, should I say, dragon in the room here, China. Because when you're talking about India and Myanmar, I don't think we can't not have a discussion on China. So my next question was supposed to be this: now that the military has taken over completely all affairs of the state, including foreign policy. Um, how do you see the China-Myanmar relationship panning out? Because at some level, Beijing did have a good working relationship with Aung San Suu Kyi. And it had developed a certain kind of level of comfort with Suu Kyi. Not to say that it doesn't have the same kind of working relationship with the Myanmar military. In fact, it's a much more, I would say, time-tested kind of a relationship, although there have been phases of downs and lows, highs and lows. But now that Suu Kyi is out of power and the military is in charge of everything, including including foreign investments from China and approving foreign investments from China and approving their projects, do you think Beijing will now come even closer to Naypyidaw, or is there going to be a change in the relationship?
We will have to really wait for an answer because these are very early days. They are barely 3 days since the coup. But you're quite right in saying that Madame Aung San Suu Kyi, uh, you know, uh, turned the China-Myanmar relationship into a much closer equation than it was during her predecessor, namely President Thein Sein. President Thein Sein was a bit hard on China. She was much more cooperative. Now, during the period she was the leader, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing was actually quite critical of China, even publicly. And I suppose he also felt a little bit out of the loop because he had to be content dealing with the lower level of dignitaries such as the foreign minister, while Aung San Suu Kyi was dealing with President Xi Jinping. So there was that psychological factor as well. Now things change. Now, no matter who the president is, the real strong man and the real ruler is Min Aung Hlaing. And when an occasion arises, he would deal with President Xi Jinping. So, once your position changes, once you become actually the power wielder rather than somebody from outside the loop, you have the larger responsibility. You have the burden of history on you. Therefore, you necessarily would try to strengthen and improve the relationship, given China's investments and stakes in Myanmar. So I expect that a ruler or a leader who was somewhat distant is now going to decide whether he wants to be like President Thein Sein or like Madame Aung San Suu Kyi or somewhere between the two. All that I can say is that I think India knows him well. He knows India well. He seems to be a leader who would like to pursue an independent foreign policy and especially perhaps inclined to ensure a certain balance between the two major neighbors, because that is what probably the national interests of Myanmar demand. Whether he would follow that path or create some other path in relationship with China, I think we will have to reserve our judgment because we cannot pretend to know the future.
Right. Ambassador Bhatia, this is my last question. And I'm asking you this because, again, you have experience, hands-on experience on this domain also. Um, my question is regarding how much can ASEAN do as a collective? This is away from the India-Myanmar relationship, in fact. We saw ASEAN release a statement which was very carefully worded, measured statement, asking for, stability, political stability to be restored in the earliest. Some countries within ASEAN have in fact categorically refused to condemn the coup, such as Thailand. And we know why that happened because Myanmar has a good working relationship with the political and military elite in Bangkok. But certain other countries like Indonesia release slightly stronger statements. And ASEAN, as we know, is hampered by this clause of non-interference in the individual affairs of every country. But even in the past military regimes, particularly in the 2000s, we did see ASEAN actually, in a way, junk this clause and make statements on how Aung San Suu Kyi should be released from house arrest, for instance. Do you still think ASEAN has some degree of leverage, more leverage, definitely more leverage, let's say, than the United States or India, to bring about some kind of restoration, if I might put, to the back to the democratic order in Myanmar?
Thank you very much. Clearly, you are a scholar. You are shaping up extremely well, and you know your fine points about ASEAN situation here. I'm not very hopeful about ASEAN serving as a very effective factor. They would be very cautious and very conservative. They know their Burmese friends very well. Myanmar is quite immune to, pressure of that kind. So, and then on top of that, they have their own, regimes with somewhat non-democratic tendencies, shall we say. And therefore, ASEAN's main priority would be stability, just as China's is, and retaining whatever little unity and centrality that ASEAN has in the region. So they will not go out on the branch to proclaim, the speedy return to democracy in Myanmar. May I just make a point here, which you perhaps would appreciate? If we take ourselves back to 2011, there was a big debate as to why Myanmar finally embarked on the path of democratic transition. The West said, oh, this is all because of our sanctions. Asia said, oh, no, it was all because of our constructive engagement. But those of us who studied Myanmar very closely came to the conclusion that while these two factors played some role, the really important factor was that the military decided that it was in its own interest to let democratic forces come into the governance gradually and slowly. This was the central reason why General Than Shwe found a safe passage to a quiet, comfortable, perhaps even luxurious retirement. So that was then. Now we need not worry too much about what the military said by way of a statement to justify the proclamation of emergency, etc. We all know the constitution does not permit the military chief to declare emergency or to fire the president. The power belongs to the president himself. All that is now history. It's a it's a coup, but coup with a difference. It's coup by people who already have had half of the power, and they chose to help themselves with the other half of power as well. So it is a unique kind of coup. And now all of us will have to proceed on the basis that there are new facts, there is a new phase, and we will have to continuously study this evolving situation very closely. And we are banking on our young scholars in India who are so enthusiastic and energetic about understanding this very complex society in Southeast Asia.
I think coup with a difference. I think I very much like that term. I think it quite encapsulates the peculiarity of the situation Myanmar finds itself in today. Ambassador Bari, I just have one last question that I really want to ask, because you
Sure.
understand the Myanmar, the Tatmadaws behavior well. The military has said that is going to cede back power to the to a civilian authority after a year, after they have implemented all the emergency, quote unquote, emergency measures, and they're going to allow a free and fair election, and the winner is going to take back power. Do you think that will really happen? Do you think now that they have taken charge, they have taken over, do you think they are going to let go of power anytime soon?
Myanmar's history does not give me too much of hope on that score.
Right, makes sense. Absolutely. History's testament that no, then the short answer to that question would be no. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bhatia. I think in a short period of time, we actually covered almost all the critical bits about at least India, Myanmar, and Myanmar's how the international approach could be in
No,
this.
I can assure you this is the best interview I've had in the past 3 days, and my good wishes to your great institution, IPCS, and to you personally.
Thank you. That's fantastic to hear. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.